February 19th, 1945, Iwo Jima, volcanic ash beaches. The tunnel mouth exhales warm, sulfur-tinged air into the pre-dawn darkness. Major Takeichi Nishi crouches in the volcanic rock, listening to the American naval bombardment pound the black sand beaches 200 meters below. He checks his watch. 03:47 hours. In 17 minutes, he will lead 3 companies of infantry and 4 Type 97 tanks in a counterattack against the Marine positions on Beach Red 1. The plan is flawless, conceived in absolute secrecy in the tunnel complexes beneath Mount Suribachi. No radio transmissions, no written orders above ground, only whispered conferences in chambers 50 feet below the surface. The Americans are exhausted from their first day ashore, disorganized, vulnerable. His attack will hit them at their weakest moment, will drive them back into the sea. Nishi has fought since Manchuria in 1932. He knows the value of surprise. He knows his enemy cannot possibly anticipate what is coming. At 03:55 hours, a Marine Corps forward observer on the beach receives a transmission from Division Intelligence. Expect enemy armor counterattack your position, approximately 0400 hours. 3 companies infantry, multiple tanks, bearing from Mount Suribachi. Prepare accordingly. The Marine sergeant stares at his radio handset as if it has spoken prophecy. 5 minutes warning. Exact composition. Correct direction. He does not question it. He has learned not to question it. He simply repositions his bazooka teams and passes the word. When Nishi's tanks emerge from the tunnel at precisely 0404 hours, they roll directly into a crossfire of prepared positions. The first Type 97 explodes before traveling 20 meters. The infantry following behind find every approach covered by interlocking machine gun fire. The counterattack collapses in 8 minutes. Nishi retreats underground, his mind churning through impossible calculations. How did they know? How could they know? The Japanese military had built its Pacific strategy on the principle of gyokusai, honorable death through surprise attack. From Pearl Harbor onward, the shock of unexpected violence had been their greatest weapon. They struck from ambush, counterattacked at night, used deception and secrecy as force multipliers against an enemy they knew possessed greater material strength. Japanese tactical doctrine emphasized operational security with near religious fervor. Officers memorized orders rather than write them down. Radio silence was maintained until the moment of attack. Unit movements happened under cover of darkness. For 3 years, these methods had worked, often enough to seem ordained by the warrior spirit itself.
But by 1945, Japanese forces across the Pacific were discovering an impossible pattern. The Americans knew. Not sometimes, not occasionally, consistently, methodically, with accuracy that defied explanation. Counterattacks were anticipated before they launched. Reinforcement convoys were intercepted before they sailed. Defensive positions were shelled before they were fully manned. It was as if the Americans could read Japanese minds, as if some supernatural force had given them vision into plans conceived in absolute secrecy. The truth was simultaneously more mundane and more devastating than supernatural prescience. The Americans were reading Japanese communications like morning newspapers and had been since 1942. The breaking of Japanese Naval Code JN-25 at Pearl Harbor's Combat Intelligence Unit had been the first crack in the wall. Army codes followed. By 1943, American cryptanalysts could decrypt most Japanese military communications within hours of intercept. But the true revolution was not just breaking codes, it was the industrial-scale system America built around that broken code. Listening stations stretched from Alaska to Australia, hundreds of operators monitoring thousands of frequencies 24 hours a day. Encrypted messages were forwarded to decryption centers via secure teletype. Decrypted intelligence was analyzed, correlated with previous intercepts, cross-referenced with direction-finding data, and transmitted to frontline commanders, sometimes within 90 minutes of the original Japanese transmission. The Japanese knew their codes were theoretically breakable. Every military in the world knew this, but they operated on the assumption that breaking codes required time, expertise, resources beyond what could be deployed in combat conditions. They believed, with reasonable logic, that even if Americans occasionally broke a code, the intelligence would arrive too late to matter. Wars moved faster than cryptanalysis. This was certainty. This was reasonable assumption. They had not accounted for American scale, for the willingness to throw hundreds of mathematicians and thousands of support personnel at the problem. They had not imagined an enemy who would build an entire global infrastructure just to listen and decrypt and disseminate. The Japanese changed their codes periodically, following security protocols, believing this protected them. But American cryptanalysts had so many intercepted messages to work with, such vast archives of traffic, that they broke the new codes within days, sometimes hours. The Japanese were fighting 20th century warfare with 19th century assumptions about what was possible.
On Luzon in January 1945, Japanese 14th Area Army discovered the full horror of radio transparency. General Yamashita planned a complex withdrawal, multiple columns moving at night through mountain passes to prepare defensive positions. No radio traffic, messengers on foot, maximum security. The withdrawal began on schedule. 12 hours later, American artillery began dropping shells on every mountain pass Yamashita's columns were using, on schedule as if following a timetable. His carefully orchestrated retreat became a running slaughter. Yamashita's chief of staff wrote in his diary, "They hunt us with certainty, every movement anticipated. It is not possible they are this fortunate." It was not fortune. It was an administrative officer in Yamashita's headquarters who had transmitted logistics requests via encrypted radio, requests that revealed the withdrawal routes through simple analysis of supply distribution. American intelligence had read it, mapped it, and forwarded targeting data to artillery battalions before Yamashita's lead elements reached the first pass. The symbolic object that represented American cryptographic dominance was not the code machine or the decrypt sheet. It was the simple radio set itself, the same device Japanese commanders used, now transformed into a betrayal mechanism. Every transmission, every encrypted order, every careful communication became a window into Japanese planning. The tools of modern military coordination had become instruments of self-exposure. Japanese forces faced an impossible choice: maintain radio silence and lose tactical coordination, or use radios and hand the Americans their battle plans. By spring 1945, paranoia infected Japanese command levels. Officers suspected traitors, suspected prisoners had talked, suspected anything but the truth, that their communication security had been comprehensively defeated 18 months earlier. Some units reverted to pure messenger systems, losing the speed of modern command and control. Others continued using radios out of necessity, hoping somehow that this transmission, this time, would remain secret. American intelligence officers read both the transmissions and the growing desperation in the traffic patterns. Fewer messages, shorter messages, the communication signature of an army that no longer trusted its own voice. Nishi survived Iwo Jima's counterattack, retreated deeper into the tunnels, led his shrinking force through 3 more weeks of cave warfare. He never used his radio again. In his final message, delivered by runner to the last command post on March 7th, he wrote, "The enemy possesses knowledge beyond our understanding. They see through volcanic rock, they hear through silence. We are fighting not soldiers, but some kind of omniscient force." He was fighting IBM tabulating machines and Navy cryptanalysts, and a radio intercept network that spanned the Pacific. He was fighting American abundance applied to information warfare, the willingness to assign thousands of people to the singular task of listening, breaking, reading, analyzing every electronic whisper in the air. He was fighting an enemy that had industrialized omniscience. Nishi died March 22, 1945, in a tunnel that American intelligence had not needed to locate by radio intercept. They already knew where every major defensive position was. They had read the deployment orders weeks earlier. The war ended not just because Japan ran out of ships and planes and soldiers, but because it ran out of secrets. The Americans had learned to hear everything, and hearing had become a weapon more devastating than any bomb. In that deafness to their own exposure lay the final truth, that modern war belongs not to those who fight in secrecy, but to those who can afford to listen to everything and still have enough people left to pull the triggers.